The story of Urian Rocks truly started 6 months earlier. He woke up in a room of impossible luxury, his head spinning. Silk curtains fluttered in the breeze, golden light filtering through. He rubbed his eyes, blinking. Where am I? The door opened, and a woman stepped in. She was beautiful, long hair tied neatly, armor fitting snugly over her uniform, and a sword resting at her hip. She bowed slightly, her expression calm yet stern. She said gently, "Young master, you've awakened." Urian froze, struck speechless. His gaze lingered on her face, her presence both strange and mesmerizing, but her words left him reeling. "Young master?" Before he could speak, she added, "I'll call the priest at once," and turned to leave. He tried to stop her. "Wait!" But she was already gone. Left alone, Urian stumbled to a mirror, and then he screamed. The reflection staring back at him was not his own. Gone was the mature, attractive man he knew. In his place stood a round-faced, chubby youth, cheeks soft with baby fat. His stomach bulged beneath his nightclothes. His voice cracked in panic. "What the hell? Where's my body? What is this? What is this nightmare?" Then the door burst open. A priest rushed in, followed by an older man whose very presence crushed the air. His face was hard as stone, his eyes cold and sharp as blades. The priest reached for his wrist and said, "Young master, please, calm yourself." But the elder man's voice thundered like a hammer. "Disgrace! Finally decided to wake up, have you?" Urian's heart nearly stopped and asked himself, who is this terrifying man? The priest tried to soothe him, whispering that his injuries were healing, that his mind seemed stable. The old man barked. His glare pierced into Urian. "Thank goodness! It would have been better if he had died. You disgrace our family, assaulting your fiancée, you monster!" Urian's eyes went wide and inquired, What did he just say?" The Marquis continued, his voice venomous. "You're 19 already. Your younger brother has awakened his aura, yet you, my eldest son, grow fatter by the day." Urian's heart hammered at the unfamiliar word. "Aura?" The Marquis jabbed a finger at him and said, "The moment you recover, you will crawl to your fiancée and apologize properly. If she doesn't forgive you, you are finished." Urian stammered. Who is she?" the Marquis roared. "Aliyah! Your fiancée, Aliyah! Remember this. If she rejects you, your life is over." Swallowing hard, Urian nodded weakly. Yes." The Marquis's voice dropped into a final growl. "Do not bring any more shame to the Rocks family." And there, the truth struck him. Rocks. Urian? Rocks? His thoughts tumbled in chaos. This can't be. I'm Urian Rocks? And that means this monster before me is Marquis Wellington Rocks? Without meaning to, he whispered aloud. "Wellington!" The Marquis's fury exploded. "How dare you call me by name?" His palm lashed out. Urian's body flew across the room and crashed to the floor. His vision blurred as voices rose around him, trying to calm the furious lord. As darkness closed in, he muttered weakly, This can't be real. Just a dream. Just a dream." And with that, his world went black. But when his eyes opened again, it was the same room, the same nightmare. He pressed his hands to his head. Why can't I wake up?" The door opened once more. This time, a white-haired woman stepped inside. Her expression softened when she saw him, and she said, "You have awakened, young master." His eyes widened, and he said, Arin?" She tilted her head and said, "Yes, that is my name." Confusion twisted his features. Desperation leaked into his voice. "Arin, tell me, was it because I pursued Aliyah? Was it because she beat me until I lost consciousness?" Her eyes widened at his sudden formal tone, but she nodded. "Yes. Lady Aliyah struck you after you tried to force yourself on her. You fainted." His stomach turned cold and said, "I'm finished." The truth unraveled before him. He knew this world. Every detail clawed at his memory. "This is the novel I wrote, my story, and I'm not the hero. I've become the villain. Urian Rocks, the scum who torments the protagonist and dies pathetically in a back alley." He screamed, No, this isn't just a webtoon." Suddenly, his voice cracking, Aaron blinked, puzzled, inquiring, "Webtoon? What is that word, young master?" Tears burned his eyes. He remembered every hateful detail of Urian Rocks, the lack of talent, the wasted life of gluttony, the shame of being heir in name only, the fiancé who would leave him for the hero, the death awaiting him in the shadows. Panic surged through him. How can I survive this? Then a thought struck him like lightning, and he said to himself, Wait, I wrote this story. I know secrets, opportunities, treasures the protagonist never found. Maybe I can use them. Clenching his fists, he tried to rise, but the weight of his bloated body dragged him down. He stumbled, nearly falling. Aaron caught his arm and said, "Young master, please, rest. You are still weak." He ignored her words, until suddenly he froze and said, "Wait, where is it? Why can't I see it now?" As if in answer, a shimmer appeared before his eyes. A transparent window unfolded in the air. His breath hitched, and said, "A status window?" He scanned it. It showed Erin's name, her traits: Swift Sword Level 2, Clear Mind Level 1, Aura Adaptation Level 1, and at the bottom, an affection meter, 0. His jaw tightened and said, "Affection? Like a dating sim? Then, at least it isn't negative." That's something. Aaron frowned, noticing his odd stare, inquiring, "Young master, are you well?" He forced a nervous laugh and said, "No, yes, I just lost my mind for a moment. I'm fine now. You may return to your duties." She gave him one last look before bowing and leaving. The moment he was alone, Urian summoned the window again. His heart pounded as he checked his own status. Name, Urian Rocks. Condition, morbid obesity. Unique trait, Creator's Eye, Level 1. 4 heavenly poison arts, locked. Synchronization rate, 99.9%. Urian leaned closer, as if he could read deeper secrets between the lines. His brow furrowed. The 4 heavenly poison arts. The words pulsed in his vision like a hidden treasure calling to him. He clenched his fists and said, "It's here, but locked." Why? The memory of his own writing returned to him. He had stolen this very ability from a wuxia tale he adored, one filled with graceful assassins and fatal poisons. The Tang clan of Sichuan, the proud sect that specialized in silent killings, deadly herbs, and hidden weapons coated in venom. And now, the same name appeared in his status window. He bit his lip, eyes narrowing, and said, "Tang clan of Sichuan, why does it exist here in a medieval fantasy world? What will happen if I unlock it?" Before he could dwell further, Aaron's voice echoed from outside the chamber. "My Lord Marquis, the young master has awakened." The heavy steps of Wellington Rocks shook the floor as he approached. His deep, commanding voice filled the hall. "He has awakened, you say? What of his condition?" Aaron bowed respectfully and said, "He woke just a short while ago, but his body, it still seems weak. He stumbled when he tried to stand." The Marquis's brows arched in surprise and inquired, "Is that so?" Priest Alio assured me his wounds were not deep. He stroked his chin, suspicion flashing in his eyes, and said, "Tell me, Aaron, did you notice anything unusual, strange in his behavior?" Aaron hesitated and said, "Well, yes, my lord. When you ordered him to apologize to Lady Elia, I expected his usual rage, but instead, he agreed, quietly, almost respectfully." The Marquise's lips curled into a bitter smile and said, "Ha, don't be fooled. That brat's nature doesn't change overnight. This calmness, just a temporary daze. By tomorrow, he'll be back to his usual self, screaming for revenge against Aaliyah." Aaron lowered her eyes and said, "I only hope he truly recovers, my lord, that he can improve little by little." The Marquis barked a harsh laugh. "Improve? Don't waste your faith on him. Even I, his father, have long given up. It would have been better if you had lived your life as a knight, Aaron, instead of serving a disgrace." Aaron clenched her hands but said nothing, her expression heavy, and said to herself, "Still, the young master today did feel different." Somehow, later that day, Urian suddenly called for Aaron. His eyes gleamed with determination and said, "Take me to the training hall. I want to do some exercises." Aaron blinked in shock, inquiring, "Training? At this hour? In your condition?" Urian said firmly, "Yes, I must." And so they walked. As they passed through the vast palace gardens, Urian gasped for breath. The grounds stretched endlessly, like several playing fields woven into one. Sweat dripped down his face. Every step felt like dragging chains. His gaze flickered sideways. Servants bowed, their eyes filled with contempt. Above their heads, his Creator's Eye revealed cold numbers. Affinity, -60, -75, -88. Hatred, disgust, revulsion. Urian's chest tightened, but he whispered inwardly, "I don't blame them. The old me was truly a beast." Finally, they arrived at the third training hall, but someone was already there. Urian's steps faltered. A glowing message filled his vision. Affinity, -91. Desire to kill. Name, Rowlon. Trait, Swift Sword, Level 1. The man inside, scarred but sharp-eyed, turned slowly, a smirk twisting his lips, saying, "Well, well, what an honor. The young master remembers me." Urian's face drained of color and said, Of course I remember you," but his heart raced. "Rowlon? The man I know, the former Urion, ruined?" He leaned toward Aaron, whispering desperately, What happened between me and him?" Aaron's eyes widened and said, "You don't remember? Years ago, when the Marquis forced you to train, you summoned Rowlon. He was only a trainee knight then. You disfigured his face with a sword, and you laughed. After that day, the Marquis gave up on making you train." Urian froze, shame washing over him, and he said to himself, "So that's the monster I replaced. Truly hopeless." A scumbag. Straightening, he muttered quickly, "Aaron, is there another hall? Somewhere quieter?" She hesitated and said, "There is the fourth hall, but it's far, and the facilities are poor. An empty field, really?" A faint smile tugged at his lips and said, "Perfect. Take me there. If I'm going to lose weight, I'll do it properly." The fourth hall was nothing but an abandoned field, weeds growing at the edges. Urian's eyes gleamed as he picked up a dagger. "The Tang clan specializes in hidden weapons. If I throw this, maybe—" He hurled it forward with all his might. The blade spun, thudding uselessly into the ground. Nothing. No change. Aaron raised a brow, inquiring, "What are you doing, young master?" Urian laughed nervously and said, "Just warming up." His shoulders slumped. "So it won't be that easy." Aaron crossed her arms and said, "Then run. Around the hall. Start building your stamina." He said, "Fine, but train as you wish. I'll manage alone." And so he ran. His breath came ragged, sweat pouring, but he refused to stop. The Marquis stood at a distance, his eyes narrowing in astonishment. His son, Urian, once mocked for his sluggish body and indulgent habits, was now sweating profusely, swinging his sword with unusual determination. The Marquis thought, folding his arms, his sharp gaze following Urian's every move, inquiring, how did he even drag himself here? And how long can this enthusiasm possibly last? Yet the days slipped by, and what was expected to be a fleeting whim turned into an unbroken routine. 3 weeks passed. Not once had Urian missed training. The Marquis could hardly believe it. Standing at the edge of the training ground one morning, his eyes widened in quiet awe. His son's body had shed a great deal of its old weight, his face sharpened into handsome features, long hidden beneath layers of fat. The Marquis murmured with pride, "As expected of my son," though his mind was still tangled with wonder. Watching him, a strange thought crossed his heart. Without the fat, he actually looks handsome. Has he truly matured, or is this just another phase? Later, in the quiet of his chamber, Urian stood before a tall mirror. He touched his sides, marveling at the changes in his reflection. His muscles were beginning to show, his face no longer bloated. He smirked, but the smirk quickly faded into a frown and said, "I've lost weight, but the Tang clan of Sichuan trait is still locked." He clenched his fists and added, "If it doesn't unlock in another month, I'll have no choice. I'll steal the fateful encounter meant for the protagonist of this story." Just as the thought settled in his mind, the door creaked open. Aaron entered carrying a tray. She said, placing it on the table, "Dinner, young master." At once, a system window shimmered before Urian's eyes. Item, Sharon's soup, a nutritious dish of the Rox family, traditionally eaten after training, helps burn fat and build muscle. Urian sighed heavily, his lips twisted in distaste. He grumbled, "Again? Sharon's soup for 3 straight weeks?" Aaron's brows arched in amusement, asking, "Are you tired of it, young master?" Urian threw his hands up dramatically and said, "Of course I'm tired of it." Aaron's smile faded. Her tone sharpened as she stepped closer and said, "Then tell me truthfully, young master, what is your real goal? Do you only want to lose weight, or do you aim to become a knight?" Urian's eyes blazed with fervor. He slammed his fist against his chest, saying, "Of course I want to become a knight." Aaron's expression hardened, her voice carrying the weight of rebuke. "Then stop complaining. Even the great Marquis himself eats Sharon's soup after training. As the young master of the Rox family, you must do the same. Endure it with pride." Urian stared at Aaron, stunned by the sharp words, then let out a defeated groan. "Fine, fine, I'll eat it. Old-fashioned tradition or not, I'll endure it, because it works." He lifted the spoon reluctantly, sipping the soup. His eyes flickered in surprise. He whispered, "The taste is a little different today," and then a message appeared. "Warning, you have ingested poison." His spoon froze mid-air, his eyes widening, inquiring, "Poison?" But before panic could take him, another message appeared. "Condition met. Trait unlocked. Tang clan of Sichuan." Urian's lips parted in shock. His heart pounded. Bewilderment consumed him. Unlocked because of poison? Elsewhere in the palace, the Marquis sat alone in his chamber, still thinking about his son's transformation. He said, "Yes, he truly has changed. Handsome, even. Could it be that he has finally matured?" A soft knock came at the door. He called, "Enter." The door opened, and a graceful woman glided in, holding a tray with a porcelain teapot. She was his second wife, Lady Ka. She said sweetly, her eyes glimmering, "My lord, I brought you some tea." She set it before him, then followed his gaze out the window and inquired, "What were you staring at so intently?" The Marquis smiled faintly and said, "Just admiring the beauty of the garden." Lady Ka's lips curved proudly, saying, "Ah, then you must must know. I've been tending to the garden myself. It pleases me to hear you appreciate it." The Marquis inclined his head in compliment and said, "Your hands work wonders, Ka. Truly, the garden has flourished." Her smile lingered, but her eyes sharpened. She leaned closer and said, "My lord, when will you finally choose Colin as your heir, as you once promised? If the matter is already decided, should it not be made official soon?" The Marquis blinked, surprised at her sudden pressing, inquiring, "Why the rush? It may take more time." Lady Ka's expression tightened, saying, "But you said within this very month." He sighed, folding his hands behind his back, saying, "You must have heard already. Urian has changed. If he continues with this newfound discipline as the eldest son, he could well become a worthy successor." Feigning gentleness, Ka nodded. "Yes, I've heard the rumors. He has improved. Truly, I was worried about him, but I am glad he has come to his senses. It must be such a relief for you, my lord." The Marquis chuckled sarcastically. "Ha! He only came to his senses after his fiancée slapped him awake." Ka tilted her head, eyes glinting with a hidden edge, and asked, "And yet, what will you do about the heir?" The Marquis sighed deeply, saying, 3 weeks of training alone is not enough to judge. I shall continue to watch him. But if he falters, if he reverts to his old ways, I will immediately grant the heirship to Colin." Kay's lips curved in a soft smile, though her eyes were shadowed, and she said, "I see. Very well, my lord. Once you finish your work, join me in the bedroom, will you?" She curtsied gracefully and left the room. But the moment she stepped into the hallway, her expression twisted. Her eyes burned with rage, her hands clenching into trembling fists. She said, "Urian, you dare stand in Colin's way?" With silent venom, she vowed, "I will make you regret it." On the other hand, Urian sat frozen in disbelief, his mind still reeling from what had just happened. The Tang clan of Sichuan trait unlocked. His lips trembled as he muttered to himself, "The Tang clan, of all things." The realization sent a chill down his spine. He knew well what that meant. The Tang family of Sichuan was legendary in the wuxia stories he used to read. Masters of poisons, assassins who used venom-laced hidden weapons, feared throughout the Jianghu. But here, in this medieval fantasy world, the trait's condition for unlocking was almost absurd. He clenched his fists and laughed bitterly, saying, "Don't tell me I had to ingest poison to unlock it." Ridiculous. Yet, the more he thought about it, the more it made sense. Urian's eyes sharpened as he remembered the soup he had been eating earlier. His system's information window flickered before him, and almost instinctively, he scrolled further down. To his shock, a new entry had appeared. An update about the Hanyang herb. His breath caught. The details unfolded before his eyes. A medicinal plant, widely used, but containing a very mild poison, harmless to adults in small amounts. Yet if it accumulates in the body, it slowly paralyzes the victim until death. A cold sweat ran down his forehead. He whispered, "So, that's it, the soup." But just as he was lost in thought, a voice broke through his daze. "Why did you stop eating?" Urian snapped back to reality at the sound of Arin's concerned voice. Blinking rapidly, he shook his head and forced a smile, saying, "Ah, no, it's nothing. I'll keep eating." And so he resumed eating quickly, almost desperately, as if he had to prove something. But inside, his thoughts churned violently. Who put the poison in my food? The answer wasn't hard to guess. He clenched his jaw. In the original story, the second son, Colin, was supposed to be named heir around this very time. Yet, strangely, the announcement had been delayed, and now Urian realized why. He said to himself grimly, "It must be them. They noticed I started training, and to secure Colin's position, they tried to eliminate me." Just then, another system window appeared before him. Condition met. Weak paralysis, poison unlocked. His eyes widened. A twisted smile spread across his lips, saying, "So, eating poison really does pay off." He finished his entire meal, every last drop of soup, then leaned back in his chair. With an odd glimmer in his eye, he looked at Arin, chuckled, and said, "That soup, it was so delicious. It actually made me cry." Arin tilted her head, confused by his strange expression. Still, she smiled gently and nodded. "I'm glad you enjoyed it, young master. Please rest well. I'll leave you alone now. Good night," he replied softly, his lips curling into an unreadable smile. "Good night." The moment Arin closed the door, Urian's expression hardened. He immediately summoned his status window, eager to confirm what had changed. There it was, floating before him. Condition: overweight, mild poisoning, mild muscle pain. Trait: Tang clan of Sichuan. Synchronization rate: 99.9%. His hands trembled in anticipation as he focused on the trait. Just like in a VR game, the window responded. The Tang clan trait branched out into 3 3 categories: poisons, hidden weapons, martial arts, all locked. A grin spread across his face and he said, "Let's start with poisons." Instantly, a long list appeared before him. Weak paralysis poison, truth serum, soul-killing smoke, and many more, all locked, requiring mastery of lower-level poisons to unlock the higher ones. He scrolled further and froze at the very end of the list. Level 30, absolute hidden. His breath hitched, saying, "So, it's like leveling in a game. Start with the simplest, then climb step by step." But a problem quickly arose. He couldn't unlock any poisons without an internal technique first. That made sense. The Tang clan always relied on internal energy to refine and control their poisons. Urion's eyes flickered with excitement and said, "Then martial arts. Let's see what you've got for me." He switched to the martial arts category. A list of internal techniques appeared, each glowing faintly. Dark poison arts, focusing on pure poisons. Thunder needle arts, centered around hidden weapons. 10,000 divine poisons energy, the legendary art that took longer to master, but allowed the wielder to master both poisons and hidden weapons. A warning appeared. Choose carefully. Only one internal technique can be selected. Urion chuckled. His heart was racing, saying, "As if it's even a question. I've read too many wuxia stories not to know the answer." His eyes locked onto the last option, and he said, "Of course, more is better." That's how every protagonist does it. He selected 10,000 divine poisons energy. The moment he confirmed, it was as though a branding iron seared itself into his soul. His mind was suddenly filled with the incantations and circulation patterns of the technique. He gasped, clutching his head. Then, as if guided by instinct, he stripped off his shirt and sat cross-legged on the floor. Closing his eyes, he began to chant the technique's incantations inwardly. At once he felt it, the strange, tingling current flowing through his veins. And he said, "This is Qi." A mixture of awe and excitement flooded his chest. He carefully guided the energy along the pathways described in the incantations, pushing it into his dantian, his energy center. The night passed in silence as he meditated. Time slipped away unnoticed. When dawn finally broke, Urion's eyes opened slowly. His gaze was sharper, his body pulsing with a newfound vitality. He whispered in amazement, "So the novels weren't lying. Training all night without sleep, and I don't feel tired at all." On the contrary, he felt more awake, more alive than ever before. His body thrummed with energy, and his senses were sharper than any blade. He could feel it, the faint ripples of Qi beyond his body. He even knew, without opening his eyes, exactly how many birds were perched outside his window. The warmth in his dantian reassured him, and then he realized something extraordinary. By simply directing his Qi to his head, he could open the status window without a mirror. He tried it, and sure enough, the glowing interface appeared before his eyes. His gaze fell on his technique, 10,000 divine poisons energy. Level 1, 1 star, 10%. Just then, he sensed a familiar aura lingering outside his door. Before he could say a word, the door creaked open, and Arin stepped inside. She paused the moment her eyes fell upon him, quickly noticing that his bed was untouched. Her brows furrowed in disbelief. She asked, her voice carrying both surprise and a hint of concern, You didn't sleep all night, did you?" Urion met her gaze and replied calmly, "You're right, I haven't slept yet." Arin sighed, crossing her arms, saying, "Then you should rest. Skip today's training. Exhaustion will only harm you." But Urion stood firmly, his eyes gleaming with determination. He shook his head with a smile. "No, I feel excellent. Better than ever. I must train today." His enthusiasm startled her for a moment, but then she sighed in defeat, a reluctant smile tugging at her lips. "Fine, but at least let me prepare breakfast for you first." As she closed the door behind her, Arin lingered for a second, her expression thoughtful. She wondered to herself, shaking her head in confusion. When did the young master start gaining muscle? Later, at the training ground, Urion stood tall before the racks of weapons. His eyes fell on a set of daggers, their steel glinting faintly in the morning light. He picked one up, and as his fingers closed around the hilt, something strange happened. Before his eyes appeared a faint, glowing crosshair, like those in the shooting games he remembered from his previous life. He blinked in disbelief, muttering under his breath, "What is this?" Without hesitation, he lifted the dagger, carefully aligning the crosshair with the target. Then, with a swift motion, he threw. The dagger hit the target dead center. From the sidelines, Arin's eyes widened in astonishment, saying, You hit it on your first try." At that moment, a translucent system window appeared before Urion, announcing hidden hidden weapons category of the Tang clan of Sichuan unlocked. Arin's voice trembled as she demanded, "Young master, what did you just do?" Yurion spread his hands helplessly, a wry smile forming on his lips, saying, "I don't know either. Perhaps. The results of my training over the past month are finally showing." He glanced at Arin, amused by how flustered she looked. It was the first time he'd ever seen her so rattled. Eager to test himself again, he grabbed another dagger. As he focused, a fiery rush of internal energy surged from deep within his stomach, flowing into his arms. He hurled the dagger with greater strength. The blade not only struck the target, it pierced through and shattered it entirely. Arin's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes wide, saying, "That's impossible! You didn't just hit it, you destroyed it!" Urion's mind raced. This crosshair, it's basically a cheat. He remembered how, in his previous life, he had been a natural at shooting games. He even won a local tournament once at an internet cafe in a game called Battle Attack. The memory made him grin. Arin, meanwhile, stared at him, her expression torn between awe and fear. Urion turned to her and asked, "Do you feel anything emanating from me?" She tilted her head, studying him carefully, then shook it slowly, saying, "Nothing special, except you've lost a lot of weight since yesterday." That made him blink. Inquiring, "Since yesterday?" She confirmed firmly, "Yes, you had already been slimming down steadily with training and Sharon soup, but today, the change is especially noticeable." Her words made Urion pause, and he said to himself, "So she can't sense the flow of internal energy in me at all. Then, I must be the only one in this world who can wield it, and no one else can even detect it." His lips curled into a smile, saying, "That means I've gained a truly unique power." He resumed training with a gleam in his eye. One dagger after another flew with pinpoint precision. Finally, with a challenging grin, he threw a dagger straight into the dagger already embedded in the target. The second blade split the first down the middle. Arin gasped and covered her mouth again. "Incredible?" Urion asked, amused. "Want to give it a try?" Arin nodded quickly, her curiosity overcoming her shock. She took a dagger, squared her stance, and threw with all her might. The blade missed the target completely, landing several feet away. Urion laughed heartily, clutching his stomach. "Ha! I finally found something you can't do." Her cheeks flushed red as she stomped her foot, saying, "That's not fair!" But before she could argue further, another system window shimmered into existence before Urion. Memory of Sachindanga completed. New skill unlocked. Straight strike. The description scrolled across his vision. Straight strike enables you to throw with greater force and speed, not just with weapons, but with any object, be it stones, wood, or even iron swords, as though it were your most treasured weapon. Urion's lips curved into an eager smile. Arin, still flustered by her own failure, barely noticed as he bent down and picked up a broken wooden sword. She asked suspiciously, "What are you doing with that?" Urion instructed, his tone calm but firm. "Step back a little." Hesitant, Arin obeyed. Urion gripped the broken sword tightly. This time, the flow of internal energy surged like a roaring river, rushing from his dantian to his arms. With a swift motion, he hurled the weapon. The wooden sword shot through the air with blinding speed, piercing straight through the target's center. The force was so great that the target shattered into splinters. Arin screamed, stumbling back in shock. "Wait, what is this power? What on earth is happening to you?" Urion's expression softened with modesty, saying, "I'm not sure. Maybe it's simply the power of practice." She shook her head violently, saying, "No, don't lie to me. What I just saw, it's impossible." Her words hung heavy in the air. Urion's eyes narrowed slightly as he stepped closer, his tone turning serious. "Arin, I know you report everything about me to my father." The Marquis, her body stiffened, her eyes widening in surprise. He continued calmly, "I'll ask you a favor. Keep this matter a secret for now. I'm testing several things. I promise I'll explain everything to you myself later. Just wait until then." Arin hesitated, biting her lip as she studied his resolute expression. Finally, she nodded. "All right, I'll keep your secret." Urion smiled faintly. "Thank you." Urion wiped the sweat from his brow, his body aching from another grueling day of training. Yet his sharp eyes weren't fixed on the fading light. No, they followed one particular figure moving across the courtyard. It was one of the chefs, Pero. His steps were quiet, cautious even, as he prepared to leave the area. Urion narrowed his gaze, suspicion gnawing at his thoughts. He murmured under his breath, the corner of his lips curling into a determined smile. "This is the perfect time." Summoning the strange gift known as the Creator's Eye, Urion focused his energy. Instantly, a translucent window shimmered into existence before him. Words etched themselves into into the air like burning runes. Pero, traits, poisonous touch, level 1, agile movement, level 1, affinity, neutral. Urion's eyes widened slightly, a dangerous glint flashing within them saying, poisonous touch. So this is the ability that lets him poison food so easily. Then it's true. He's the one who poisoned me. His jaw tightened and said, good. Then this will be my first real test. Without hesitation, Urion gathered his qui, summoning the paralysis poison technique he had only just mastered. With a sharp flick of his will, the invisible poison surged outward and struck Pero from a distance. Pero gasped, his body locking up. His legs buckled beneath him, and he collapsed to the ground, his limbs stiff and useless. Urion smirked. Above Pero's head, a glowing timer materialized, marking the duration of the paralysis effect. 1 full hour. Urion whispered, his voice laced with satisfaction. Perfect. Looks like my training wasn't for nothing. He quickly hoisted the paralyzed chef onto his shoulder and slipped into a secluded alley, far from prying eyes. The shadows cloaked them, and soon Pero's eyes fluttered weakly as he began to regain fragments of consciousness. Urion crouched before him, his expression dark, his eyes sharp as blades. He asked in a cold, threatening tone, do you know who I am? If you value your life, answer truthfully. From this moment, every word you give me will decide your fate. Pero struggled, his lips parting, but no sound came. His throat convulsed uselessly. Urion chuckled darkly, asking, can't speak? Fine. Then we'll make this simple. Blink once for yes, twice for no. Do you understand? A single blink. Urion leaned closer, his face inches from Pero's. Good. Now, answer me. Were you the one who poisoned my soup? Pero hesitated only briefly before blinking once. Urion's expression hardened and said, so, it was you. Just as I thought, he pressed further, his tone sharp, saying, the poison you used, was it the Hanyang herb? Blink once. Confirmation. Urion's eyes narrowed, his breath growing heavier. This was the moment of truth. He inquired, and who ordered you to poison me? Was it Martian Kina? Pero blinked twice. A denial. Urion's eyes widened, saying, what? Don't you dare lie to me. His voice became low and dangerous, dripping with menace. He leaned close, whispering like the hiss of a blade, and said, I'll slit your throat here and now. I'll know if you're lying. Pero trembled, sweat rolling down his forehead. Urion repeated, his voice rising with fury. Was it Lady Ka who ordered you? Pero shut his eyes tightly, then slowly blinked twice again. Urion stared at him for a long, tense moment. His instincts screamed at him, yet he saw the truth reflected in Pero's terrified eyes. He wasn't lying. Urion muttered under his breath. Then, who? For now, he decided the answer could wait. Straightening, he pulled something from his robes, a small, bitter morsel, and shoved it between Pero's lips. Urion ordered coldly, swallow. Fear flickered in Pero's eyes, but he obeyed, choking down the piece. Urion said, his voice echoing with authority, that was a paralysis poison. From this moment, you have only 1 month to live. Unless you receive the antidote I alone possess, your internal organs will rot and you will die screaming. Pero's eyes widened in sheer terror, his breathing shallow and quick. Urion leaned close, his eyes burning like fire. So from now on, you follow my orders. Blink once, if you understand. Pero blinked desperately, once. Urion said, good, and he placed his hand on Pero's head and released the paralysis. A sudden rush of energy surged through the chef's body. Stunned, Pero gasped as feeling returned to his arms and legs. He stammered, what are you? Urion's eyes cut him off like blade. Answer me again. Who gave the order to poison me? Pero shivered, his voice hoarse but clear. It was the Knight Commander, Carox Levington. Urion froze, recognition flashing in his eyes. Carox Levington. Pero continued in a whisper. He ordered me to make sure the young master dies of illness before the year ends. Urion's expression twisted in grim realization. Carox, Ka's older brother, the man who gained his commander's title thanks to her marriage to the Marquis, Urion muttered. So I wasn't entirely wrong. He is her partner in this. Pero watched in silence, too afraid to speak. Finally, Urion reached into his robes again and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He thrust it into Pero's trembling hands and said, look at it. Pero unfolded it, his eyes darting nervously across the sheet. It was a long list, names of poisons, each more dangerous than the last. Urion said firmly, you know poisons better than most, which means you can get them from the black market with the gold Carox is feeding you. Start tomorrow night. Bring me what you already have first. Pero swallowed hard, hard and inquired, Why do you need all these poisons? Urion's eyes flashed with sudden fury, saying, I did not give you permission to ask questions. Pero flinched, dropping to his knees, saying, I understand. Urion said coldly, Good. Then, as Pero turned to leave, he added one last command. And from now on, my soup must always be full of Hanyang herb. Pero froze, eyes wide in utter confusion, inquiring, Well, what? Urion only laughed, a deep, amused sound. You'll understand soon enough. Martial arts are truly amazing. As Pero stumbled away, still bewildered, Urion's lips curled in a sly smirk, saying, And to think he believed my lie. That wasn't poison at all, just dried leaves. His gaze turned skyward, filled with sharp determination. I need to master the martial arts of the Tang clan of Sichuan quickly, because if my story unfolds as I originally wrote it, then something terrifying will soon erupt beyond these walls. That night, as promised, Pero returned with several poisonous herbs from his stash. Urion examined them one by one, the status window before his eyes naming and explaining each plant instantly. Pero stared in disbelief, inquiring, How do you know these poisons so well? Even experts struggle to identify them. Urion smirked, feigning arrogance. For me, such knowledge is nothing. A trivial matter, in truth. It was the status window feeding him every detail. Urion lifted one herb delicately. He said, Tell me, why carry these others? Wasn't Hanyang herb alone enough to kill me? Pero lowered his head, whispering, Because the Hanyang herb works slowly. The body can build resistance to it. But if it's mixed with Yakroba poison, its effect becomes far stronger and nearly undetectable. Urion's eyes glimmered dangerously, saying, Interesting, very interesting. The night air was heavy with silence when Urion finally leaned back against the wall, his thoughts sharp as blades. The poisonous herbs Pero had delivered were still in his hands, their colors ominous under the faint candlelight. Urion studied them with narrowed eyes and said, So, mixing poisons strengthens their effects, makes them sharper, deadlier. He turned his gaze to Pero, who stood stiffly before him, his face pale. Urion asked, his voice calm, How do you know all this? His piercing stare made Pero swallow hard. The chef lowered his head, his voice trembling with both fear and bitterness. When I was only 8 years old, I was sold to the Levington family. They trained me under a poison master. He clenched his fists, his teeth grinding. There were about 20 other children. One by one, they all died. Only I survived. Urion's eyes glimmered dangerously, reading between the lines, and he said to himself, So he carries a grudge against the Levington family. Good, very good. That means I've found myself a tool I can use. With a rare smile, Urion leaned forward and praised him, saying, You've done well, Pero. Very well. The chef's eyes widened, almost startled by the unexpected approval. He bowed awkwardly. Urion ordered, waving him away. Go, you're dismissed. The moment Pero left, Urion turned back to the poisonous herbs. His lips curved into a reckless grin, saying, Now, it's my turn. Without hesitation, he began to eat them, leaf by leaf, root by root, swallowing the bitter and burning taste. Almost immediately, glowing messages appeared before his eyes. You have ingested poison. The body of 10,000 divine poisons is absorbing the toxins. You have ingested poison. The body of 10,000 divine poisons is absorbing the toxins. Poisons is absorbing the toxins. One after another, the notifications flooded his vision, relentless. Suddenly, a harsh red message flashed. Danger! Immediate breathing meditation required. Urion's body convulsed, cold sweat beating across his skin. His face twisted in pain, but he clenched his jaw, refusing to collapse. He gasped, breathing, meditation, sinking into a lotus position. Closing his eyes, he forced his ki to circulate, fighting the tide of toxins as if wrestling a raging beast. He said, I will not fail here. I will advance. Hours bled into the night. By dawn, his body radiated a strange, dangerous aura. The next morning, the door creaked open. Urion, Arin's gentle voice entered first, followed by her footsteps. She froze as her eyes landed on him. Her face flushed red. He sat shirtless in meditation, his upper body glistening with sweat, but what shocked her wasn't his bare chest. It was how drastically his body had changed. The boy who had once been swollen with fat was now lean, muscular, and sharp. His shoulders were broad, his stomach flat, his arms taut with defined strength. Arin's lips parted in disbelief. What happened to you overnight? At that moment, a window appeared before Urion's eyes. 10,000 divine poisons. Energy has advanced to the second stage. New martial art acquired. Little dragon step. New poison techniques unlocked. Urion's Aaron's eyes gleamed and said to himself, so it's true. Advancement opens new doors. Aaron took a step closer, only to cover her nose suddenly, eyes watering, saying, "What is that smell?" Urian blinked, then realization hit him and he said to himself, so the novels weren't exaggerating. When martial arts advance, impurities and waste are forced out of the body at once. No wonder it reeks so badly. He moved to open the window for air, but Aaron waved her arms frantically, saying, "Don't you dare, just go! Immediately! To the bath! Now!" Urian smirked despite himself and obeyed. After scrubbing himself clean, he returned, dressed and refreshed. Together, he and Aaron made their way toward the training grounds. On the path, Urian's mind buzzed with excitement as he tested his new skill. His steps became light, almost floating, weaving in strange patterns. He said Little Dragon Step, the Tang clan's secret footwork for assassination and evasion, straight out of Wuxia novels, and it's mine. Aaron frowned, watching him carefully, and inquired, "Are you sure you're okay? You're walking... It looks strange, like you're drunk." Urian burst into laughter. "Ha, ha, ha, don't worry, I'm perfectly fine." But Aaron's eyes lingered with worry, saying, "Are you really sure about going to the first training hall? It'll be crowded with knights." Urian only nodded with confidence. "That's exactly why. I want to see how they train." When they entered the training hall, the clashing of steel and shouts of effort filled the air. Knights turned their heads, curious about the newcomers. One of them whispered, "That's Aaron, the young master's maid." Another murmured, "But who's that man with her? He's handsome." A pause. Then realization dawned on one. "Wait, could that be the young master? Urian?" Another said, "What? Impossible." One said, "No, look closer." The rumors said he lost a lot of weight, but this is something else. Whispers spread like wildfire, disbelief coloring every word. He used to be fat as a pig just a month ago. What kind of magic did he use? Could it be internal energy? Urian heard every word clearly. He smirked, but his eyes swept across the knights like a predator. Then his gaze landed on one knight practicing alone with intense focus. His movements were sharp, his stances steady. Urian muttered, "He'll soon become a junior knight." Aaron nodded. "Those are the basic sword stances of the Rox family. Watch closely." Urian's eyes widened slightly and said, "Wait, that's Cried, one of the main characters from my novel, a future ally of the protagonist. So he's been here all along." His lips curled, saying, "Interesting, very interesting. This could be useful later." Turning back to the whispering knights, Urian summoned his creator's eye. The window revealed their affinity toward him, ranging from hostile to disgust to murderous intent. His eyes gleamed coldly, saying, "Perfect. They'll make excellent test subjects." He raised his hand subtly and released a faint mist, lingering poison. At once, one of the knights collapsed to his knees, clutching his stomach in agony. His comrades rushed over in panic and said, "Call a priest! What's wrong with him?" The knight screamed in torment, his body writhing. But then, as suddenly as it had begun, the pain vanished. He stood up, dazed. His comrades barked in outrage. "What? You're fine? You wasted our time." Urian smirked at the scene and said, "Excellent, success." But he wasn't finished. He whispered, activating soul-killing smoke. Invisible to Aaron, the smoke spread. At first, nothing seemed amiss, until one knight's eyes widened in horror. "Monster! It's coming!" The others blinked. Then suddenly they, too, began screaming. "Skeletons! Demons! Everywhere!" Panic erupted. Knights flailed their weapons, shrieking as they fought hallucinations only they could see. They collapsed one by one, trembling, eyes wild with terror. Aaron stood frozen, bewildered, inquiring, What's happening to them? Why are they acting like this?" Each knight, in his own mind, was besieged by grotesque creatures, demons clawing at their throats, skeletal warriors advancing. They were trapped in a nightmare of illusions. Finally, the smoke dissipated. The knights blinked, breathing hard, confusion overtaking their terror. "What was that?" I don't understand." Urian's eyes gleamed with satisfaction, and he said, "If I push further, there'll be bloodshed. This is enough for today." He turned to Aaron and said, "Let's go back. It's too noisy here. We'll head to the fourth training hall." Aaron hesitated, but nodded. As they walked back, a maid rushed toward them, bowing. "Young master, you have a visitor." Urian arched a brow, inquiring, "A visitor?" the maid said, her voice nervous. "Yes, Lady Elia Marcus has come to see you. She's waiting inside." Aaron froze beside him, and at those words, Urian's mind drifted, and he said to himself, "Elia Marcus, my fiancée, the one known for her fists." He remembered the flow of the original story. This was around the time when she demanded the annulment. The original Urian, a pathetic scoundrel, had refused. confused. He sighed heavily and said, no choice but to face her. Meanwhile, inside the hall, Lady Ilya sat with cold determination in her eyes. This time she had made up her mind. She would break off the engagement once and for all. Her fists rested tightly on her lap, betraying the tension she tried to conceal. The heavy doors opened. Urian stepped in. Ilya's eyes widened. Her breath caught in her throat. She gasped, "You?" stunned by his transformed appearance. The man before her was almost unrecognizable.